Something I hear a lot from postpartum moms is, I wish someone had told me while I was pregnant that these things might happen to my pelvic floor after giving birth. Because knowing these things ahead of time, you can educate yourself and prevent them from happening, or at least have an action plan and resources if it happens to you. So today I'll share the top 5 pelvic floor issues that moms experience after birth. And if you're ready to take action and avoid these issues, make sure you're signing up for my free prenatal masterclass for active moms to be in the description below. The first thing that can happen is a prolapse. So a prolapse is when the uterus, bladder, or rectum falls in the vaginal canal and creates this sensation of heaviness at the vaginal opening, like a full tampon that would need to be taken out but just sticks around. Gravity increases the symptoms, so like being on your feet, going for walks, but also exercising and lifting your baby can also increase that sensation. Some of the risk factors to develop a prolapse includes the length of your pushing stage. So the longer you push, the more likely you are to have a prolapse after birth, as well as heavy lifting and constipation. And these are all things that you can control to some degree with the right guidance and education. The second thing that might happen is the inability to walk or sit after you have your baby. You might be surprised by this, but some moms cannot walk or sit after birth because of excruciating pelvic pain or tailbone pain. And I don't have the stats here, but I would say it's a rare occurrence, but it does happen. And the reason for this is that when you're in labor, your pelvic bones have to move out of the way to let your baby go through. In an ideal world, they come back the way they were after birth, but sometimes they may remain misaligned and might need some manual work to realign them. One way to prevent this from happening is to make sure that you choose smart birth positions that free up your pelvic bones during labor and pushing. And that's one of the reasons, amongst others, why I do not recommend giving birth on your back. I have a whole video on that topic and I'll link it below. The third pelvic floor problem that might happen after birth is pooping your pants. This is by far the most embarrassing symptom that you could ever have postpartum. In medical terms, we call it fecal incontinence, and that basically means that you're unable to hold your poo and make it on time to the bathroom. Can you imagine? Like being on a stroller walk with your baby and other moms and literally pooping your pants? That must be the most horrible thing ever. And 1 mother out of 10 experiences bowel incontinence after birth, and it's more likely to happen if you have a 3rd or a 4th degree tear. So by preventing severe tears and preparing your pelvic floor for birth during pregnancy, we can help prevent fecal incontinence. Again, if that's something you're interested in learning about, book a spot in my free prenatal masterclass in the description below to get started on your learning. Another symptom that not a lot of people are aware of is what I call razor blade sex. It basically feels like razor blades in your vagina during intercourse, and that is often caused by scar tissue from vaginal tears. And it's a very challenging one for couples, right? Because postpartum sex is already difficult the way it is because of so many other reasons, right? You're both sleep deprived, exhausted, lack of energy. Your baby might be sleeping in your room, which makes it weird. And you might have sore boobs from breastfeeding. You might be worried about getting pregnant if you don't have any contraception method yet. Honestly, I can go on forever about all the things that can get in the way of having sex after having a baby. And if on top of that, when you do have sex, it feels like your vagina will tear apart, it's on fire, well, then it's the cherry on top, right? And of course, you can try and be intimate in other ways, but for some people, intercourse has always been their main way of engaging sexually. So it's really hard to change that. And when you can't engage sexually in a relationship, it can affect your connection as a couple, right? Some of my clients who had this issue were saying, we're now living as roommates, right? And that's not how they picture their future. So again, by doing prevention work in pregnancy to prevent tearing, then we can prevent scar tissue and postpartum painful sex. And if there is scar tissue to address postpartum, I just want to let you know that this is fixable as well, right? But I want you to get started early on getting professional guidance from a pelvic floor physio to address these issues, because the more you wait and the more it's going to linger around, and the more it's going to impact your relationship as well. And the last symptom, but not the least, is bladder incontinence, i.e. peeing your pants. The prevalence of urinary leakage after birth is 20% after a vaginal birth and 15% after a cesarean. So it's not because you have a cesarean that you are necessarily protected, because pregnancy itself negatively affects the pelvic floor and core, and this whole core pelvic floor system is super important for bladder control. There's different types of incontinence. The most common one is bladder leakage that happens with sneezing, coughing, laughing, or running, and that's why you see women cross their legs when they sneeze or cough, because it's a strategy they have developed to try and hold their bladder. And the other type of incontinence is associated with bladder urgency. So that means you leak urine after feeling a strong urge to go to the bathroom, and you leak urine on the way to the bathroom. And some moms will have incontinence at random times too, when they walk or exercise or go from sit to stand. So it really varies. What is important to remember though is the more we work on preventing birth injuries by doing pelvic floor training in pregnancy, and the more we limit the likelihood of peeing your pants after birth. And postpartum, starting to exercise your core and pelvic floor as early as possible will reduce the likelihood of having these symptoms long term. The moms we work with in our online coaching program start their pelvic floor exercises as of day 3 after birth. Day 3! Are you surprised? And that's regardless if they have a C-section or a vaginal birth. So by the time they see their pelvic floor physio, normally around the 6 weeks mark, their pelvic floor is already in amazing shape, which of course helps a lot to regain bladder control if they had issue in that regard. If pelvic health prevention speaks to you, book a spot in my free prenatal masterclass below to get started, because I'll cover the step-by-step method that the moms in our online coaching program have followed to have amazing birth experiences with very minimal pelvic floor damage and recover from their birth in less than 4 months. So I hope to see you in my masterclass, and if you learned something from this video, make sure you give it a like, and thanks for watching.